Hello and welcome to the second Paradigm Drift. We are thrilled that you have joined us here tonight for our adventure into the world of theories. My name is Anastasia.
I'm Shilo, and this is the place where you guys have a chance to tell the world about your idea of how something works. So you're going to have 60 seconds. We will pull your name, hopefully, out of this here lovely hunting hat. If your name is called, get ready, get your mic and camera working, and we'll bring you into the room. You'll have 60 seconds to present your idea. And there's a couple of things today that we want you to remember. You got to make it clear what problem it is you're solving first and foremost, and then
You have to make it clear what your solution to the problem is.
And if that goes well and you can do it in 60 seconds, then you're a winner.
There's one more condition. So first is you have to state your problem, theorists. Second, you have to state your solution. And third, this is the real coup, is that you have to connect your problem into your solution. Yours can't just be put on the table and then walked away from. We need to understand.
With us today for the second edition of Paradigm Drift, we have, just like last time, one of our good friends to help us evaluate these theories. Her name
is
Kate Owlsley. Kate was a college friend of Nastya's. I'll let you introduce her, actually.
Kate's a college friend of mine. She is brilliant. She is into the world of science and constantly preoccupied with the questions of how everything fits together. And I cannot imagine anybody better to help us figure out what the next theories that are going to change the world are. So, Kate, are you in
She
there
might know a thing or two about science as well, as it turns out.
But
we're going to try to protect Kate's identity as much as possible because she works in covert operations for the No, I'm just kidding. She's trying to keep a clean game on the public-facing side of things. So, Kate, welcome to the Paradigm Drift number 2.
Ready to have my mind blown.
Excellent. All right.
The scientific revolution starts now.
DemystifySci podcast.
Let us see in the dark.
Okay, so how this is going to happen is I have a hat. The hat is full of names. I see Casey Brophy says that he wants to be in the hat, but I'm not sure if Casey Brophy is in the hat. But I have an extra piece of paper. But I'm going to pick one name right now. This person is going to be on deck. And so for our on deck character, we have William. Is William here? Hold on, I gotta look.
Actually, first up is...
I know. So William, you're on deck. But before we go to William Sosa. It is that William Sosa. But before we go to William Sosa, make sure while we do this, you test your audio, you test your microphone. We have with us a very, very special guest, somebody that we have had on the podcast before who I actually have no idea how to describe this person except to say that he spends his time untangling the absolute mysteries of philosophy and spirituality and history and science, and it is none other than Kehlan Morgan of Formscapes.
Hey, come on, give Kehlan a hand, people. Come on.
Excellent. All right, so Kehlan, I'm going to bring you in as a panelist, and then Shilo's going to play us a couple of little tunes while we get Kehlan on board. All right. All right, welcome, Kehlan. I am going to put 60 seconds on our gigantically obnoxious clock, and you're ready to go. And then afterwards, we'll talk for a little bit about your ideas. Are you going to count us in, Shilo?
Am I visible? Should I be visible? Am I audible?
We hear you. We hear you and we see you.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. All right, tell me when.
All right. Go for it.
Let's go.
All right, so formative causation is the notion that organic systems cannot be understood in a purely reductionistic manner because causal power is distributed among a number of different compositional layers, which gives shape to organic systems. Reductionism, conversely, would imply that as long as we understand parts, then we can understand wholes, because all of the causal power is localized within the lowest level constituents of the system. Formative causation instead implies that higher order forms or patterns can act in a top-down manner by strengthening or weakening causal relationships at lower levels by acting upon inherent indeterminacies within such systems. Formative causation is extremely consequential for the field of biology, but also potentially for scientific epistemology in general, as well as our understanding of more metaphysical notions, such as that of conscious agency.
Mm.
Incredible.
All right. Kehlan Morgan. Hey. What is up?
Wow, that was excellent.
That is the way we get this started.
Okay, so this is a theory that is the like inverse of emergence.
Yeah, actually, it's weird because I've actually seen the notion, like the term emergent causation, used to refer to pretty much the exact same thing. In fact, there's this guy, I think he's a computer science guy. His name is actually Eric Hoel, appropriately enough, Hoel, and he actually has these like formal proofs. He calls it emergent causation, where he's trying to like demonstrate like logically that there is causal influence at like higher like compositional layers that can't be reduced to like the lowest level constituents. It's really interesting. If you're like a logic chopping person, I would totally recommend checking out his stuff. But I think it's if not identical, then it's very similar to what we see in these ideas from like Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake is the one who the formative causation, that's his term. But we also see that kind of thing, I would say, in Michael Levin, his theorizing about these like bioelectric fields and whatnot. So it's kind of a whole little area of what was once epigenetics, which is kind of turning into a whole different thing now, I would say. So yeah.
What is the problem that it's addressing? Like, what is the issue with? I assume reductionism is the problem. And why does reductionism let us down? That might be obvious, but it's worth asking.
Right. Yeah. So the problem is, I would say that the problem is really just that reductionism is kind of tying a hand behind our backs. So I wouldn't say that this is an idea where you have like one specific mystery that this could be posed as a solution to. So that's a bit tricky. But I think that reductionism in general, I think it really fails to accord with a number of things that we see in nature. In fact, I think probably the most obvious one would be that we actually do experience ourselves as exerting a kind of volition or agency over the world, right? And reductionism can only really say that that's some kind of illusion or another. But if we start thinking of wholes as able to push parts around rather than it just being one way, bottom to top, then we can say, okay, well, I am a whole, right? And that has a causal influence that can't just be reduced down to what my neurons or atoms or molecules are doing. And so I would say that it much better accords with the actual experience of being alive, which I think should be taken as empirical data, or maybe the most basic kind of empirical data, as a matter of fact.
I mean, I love this.
We need to do a whole podcast on this. Kate, what do you think? You got thoughts?
I think that makes sense. I think that's how I think about biology, honestly, that there's like a certain drive and it's very fundamental to living things, and it drives like cell division, DNA replication. So I think
Yeah, it's crazy. Like Darwin, I think in his magnum opus mentions this will to survive as much as he mentions this spirit of competition or whatever makes it into the textbooks today. Like if you actually look at it, I think survival is mentioned. This will to survive is mentioned like 30 odd times throughout the book.
I just think that it's so important to realize that these things go both ways, right? Because like reduction is to say that wholes are made out of parts and parts sum to make the whole, right? That's like if you start with something really big and you figure out how it works, you just kind of like tear it apart to smaller and smaller pieces, and then you're like, look, these are the pieces that make this whole. And the common wisdom is that it only goes in one direction. And I actually recently have been thinking a lot about this, and I even tried to like base a criticism of analytic idealism on it.
Anastasia tried this out when we were making dinner the other night.
I knew it was coming.
Well, it's awesome that you presented this perspective, though, because it is the rebuttal to Anastasia's argument from earlier.
It was, where I was like, the reason that consciousness can't come first is because...
Okay.
I know, we did. Consciousness can't come first because it's emergent, and like big things don't affect small things. And here comes Kehlan, he's like...
Well, yeah, I mean, we're moving a lot of atoms around this room.
Don't get me started. This is gonna like nobody else is gonna have time to talk because we're just gonna be talking for the next 2 hours. We gotta pass the mic.
Ah, jeez. All right. Well, yeah, Kehlan, man, we cannot thank you enough and say how much we love you, and we need to do more podcasts because we just love hanging out with you so much.
Hey,
and
always a pleasure. Let's just start a Kehlan and Michael and Anna podcast. Like, I'm down for this. But anyway, yeah, love doing that. This was super fun. Yeah.
All right, Kehlan, thank you so much, man. Have a good night. Thank you,
You
guys.
as well.
All
Hey, give it up for Kehlan.
Give it
Come
up
on.
for
Come
Kehlan.
on.
All right, philosophy is what kicks off the night. All right, so we have William Sosa on stage, and then we have Ryan Matson on deck. Is Ryan Matson in the room? Yeah, we got Ryan Matson. All right, so we're gonna do William, and we're gonna see. William seems like he's having some problems with his video and his audio, and so if we have an issue with him, then Ryan Matson, you are gonna be on stage much faster than you expect. All right, William. All right, boot up your microphone and your camera. I can see that you have them. All right. Okay, we can hear you, but can we see you? All right.
Very good. Hang on.
Let's try it. I'm having a really hard time hearing you, though. You're really quiet. All right, William, I'm gonna move on because we don't have time. So I'm gonna move on to Ryan Matson, and in the meantime, figure out your microphone stuff, and if you can figure out how to get those volumes lower or volumes higher, then we can have you back. All right, Ryan Matson, and so the next person after Ryan Matson is gonna be Edwin Basye, who I know is in the room. So Edwin, you're on deck. Ryan Matson, we got you in the zone. Activate your peripherals. Alright, it looks like Ryan's having some problems too. He's in here. Alright. Oh, we got a microphone? Okay. Yeah, we can hear you. You got your camera on? Not quite. Alright, guys. No, still no. Alright, Edwin, you're up. We're just running through people. Make sure that before you come in, you have everything ready, because we got like 35 people that want to be in on this game, and we got no time to spare, and we got no time to wait. Alright, so who do we have? Edwin's in here. Edwin's on. Alright, finally. Edwin, welcome. Oh, you're muted still, Edwin. Down at the bottom left. There we go. All right. So we got a minute on the clock.
Guys, everybody give Edwin a round of warm applause. Welcome to the show. Come on. All right. Let's see what happens.
All right. We got 1 minute on the clock. Edwin, let's do it. Oops, that's
Now we got 2 minutes.
Ready?
We'll count you in.
Yeah.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hit it.
Okay. As technology and power grow, so do the risks of catastrophic wars or ecosystem collapse. If we really want humanity to survive and thrive, we need a fundamental law that eliminates initiatory force and ensures peaceful collaboration and value exchange. My proposal is that the best chance to achieve human survival and exceed a Type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale is to install a universal law of no initiatory force. It was introduced by Dr. Frank R. Wallace some decades ago, who called it the Constitution of the Universe. It says no one, individual, group, or government may initiate force, threat of force, or fraud against another. By eliminating the initiation of violence, we focus on creating a world driven by voluntary cooperation rather than coercion. No government in history has ever had this rule in its constitution. Thank you.
Hey. I love it.
Well done.
Voluntarism.
It's kind of like game theory too, right? Okay, so let me see if I get this straight. The idea is that we are under threat of war and destruction, that no country has ever taken the approach of saying that they will never begin a conflict, and so perhaps something that we should try is that we should make it so that no country can begin a conflict.
Yes, that's correct. And it also applies to the people of that country. So the government cannot initiate force in any way against the citizens of the country. So it basically becomes a protection only government or governance, you could say.
And so do you get to just basically like murder people on the spot if they initiate violence?
No, there's no initiatory force by individuals, groups, or government. So if there's force, then the government comes in to protect and fight against the perpetrators. So
With non-lethal means.
It's pretty simple. It's just like there's a written out thing which I didn't have time in 1 minute to read out. But there's like 3 articles to this rule. And the first one is no initiatory force. The second is if initiatory force is taken, you have the right to defend yourself. And that could be also the government stepping or a private.
Oh my god! I forgot about that one.
No initiatory force.
Oh, okay. We need to put like a compressor on that one.
Edwin, where are you from, man?
I live in Bisbee, Arizona. I grew up in California.
Oh, we love Bisbee. We played a show out there last spring,
cool.
about a year ago.
At Gene's Parlor.
2 shows.
I was a computer programmer in Silicon Valley for like 20 years. And programmer before that. I started out in programming school back in 1971 doing COBOL and on a IBM 36030 that had 16K of memory. So I've seen all the changes in the technology since then. It's been pretty amazing.
Owlsley, do you think that there's issues with this theory?
Issues with what?
Oh, sorry, that was a question
Sorry,
for Kate.
that's me.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I was like, who's that?
Owlsley, it's like you forgot your name for a second.
I would never. So my question is, like, I guess history is filled with examples of governments planting like false flag operations and saying like, oh, we're only like attacking in defense or like doing preemptive war, which I guess your theory covers, but there's so many examples of governments creating, making it look like a different government is attacking when in fact, the original government wants to go to war.
Yeah,
It's true.
that is true, and that's covered under the fraud rule, which is included in the
Yeah.
first article.
But
Okay, so
often
you
the fraud doesn't come out until like 10, 20 years later.
yeah.
So how do you
Yeah,
avoid
that can be an issue.
They
But
need to have an omnipotent character in this. Like you have to make a god, right? Because somebody has to know what everybody's doing.
well, some people who are into this idea are actually thinking of an AI kind of governance, which kind of scares me in a way, but also may be really good. So that's something that I and my friends are going to be thinking about in the future, how that can work without becoming authoritarian. But the whole premise of it is it's not authoritarian. So any AI would not have the power to, if programmed correctly.
These are all things though that leave us with a lot of there's it's an interesting idea, but there's a lot of potential ways that it falls apart, right?
I mean, the enforcement of the code is the problem, I feel like, in many different governance structures.
I think the biggest
I think
issue
that
is not
creating the invisible god that's like mythological.
Palantir?
Palantir, yeah, Palantir. Palantir will be our new god. But no, like having the god not exist, but convincing everybody that it does. This is sacrilegious. Anyone who's religious in the chat,
We're just
I'm terribly
reinventing
sorry.
the monotheistic
Well, no, I'm
overlord.
just like to have a real overlord is tricky, right? Because you're like, well, who's gonna do the thing? Like, we need to make the overlord first. But if it's faith based, you don't need to have the overlord.
That's
Everybody
the thing.
kind
It
of
almost
does it
seems like
themselves.
you need to level up everybody's conscious experience. Like everybody has to agree to it. That's the problem.
the idea is to get rid of all external authority,
Except for the one that like arbitrates, right?
and only steps in when there is a violation of Article 1, which is the no initiatory force clause.
So this is the first solicitation on Paradigm Drift. I want somebody to solicit the design of the omnipotent being that arbitrates next time. I need a theory of arbitrator.
I mean,
government.
What's that?
Like a blockchain government, it sounds like.
Yeah, there we go. Everything's on the blockchain.
because no one could ever hack the blockchain.
That the blockchain is not a bad idea.
But I feel like this
it can be used as a tool within the system. It
underscores a cool morality that we've visited a very, very, very long time ago with our friend Seamus on the podcast, which is the idea that morality can be distilled down to consent, right? So as long as you're not violating somebody's consent in any way, it isn't technically an immoral action. But as soon as you start interfering with people's autonomy, then everything goes sideways.
I tried this out on Alyosha last night, actually, and he was like, checkmate, you can never consent to state control. Like that's not there's no option. There's no place where you can go that's stateless.
It's a libertarian philosophy, right? Seamus would say the state can go F itself, basically.
Exactly. All right, look, Edwin, I think that this is really interesting. I would love to see the next level, which is the theory of the arbiter. But we got to let you go because we got the next person. Wendi Gardiner is coming up. I should have announced this earlier. I'm sorry that
Thank you, Edwin, by the way. Shout out.
Thank you, Edwin.
Big applause for Edwin.
Come on, guys. It's a very utopian idea. I like it a lot. The issues in the implementation.
All right, so Wendi, as you go, I appreciate you guys bearing with our dust on this because we're doing the work of a team, I think of at least 4 people. I'm like reading the chat, trying to manage things. Wendi, where are you? There you are. All right, we've promoted you to panelist. Come over. Okay, she's there. So let me make sure who's in here because we got a Ben that I'm trying to get in next, but he's not here. So let's see who we got. All right. We got Ricky Cisco is on deck. And then Wendi, go ahead. You are here, and we are ready.
Okay, I put my entire talk on in the chat, but it looks like it disappeared.
Well, the chat tends to go. All right, you got 1 minute 60 seconds. Feel free.
Wait, hold on, come on. Welcome. Sorry, is it Whitney?
Wendy.
The problem,
Wendy. Welcome, Wendy. Come on, Wendy. Come on, give her a hand. Give her a
The
hand.
problem is the expensive treatment for cancer.
Hold on.
Hold on.
We're not ready yet. We'll count you in. We'll count you in on 3. Let's make a habit of that so nobody gets confused.
All right.
Give me 1, 2, 3 infinity.
All right. 1, 2, 3, infinity.
Okay, the problem is cancer. It's too expensive and complicated. I developed a cure based on somebody you had a while ago, Wal Thornhill from the Electric Universe. And among his advocates is a fellow by the name of Jerry Tennant. And he says that all health and disease is on a voltage scale within the body, which is expressed in a solution as pH. So I discovered that if I monitored my pH in the morning and afternoon, it represents the pH in the interstitial fluid, which was only discovered in 2014. If that pH is below 6.8, I adjust with a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. And if it goes up, then I'm done. If it's still low, I add some more bicarbonate of soda. I had a PSA reading of 10 in February of 2023. Got a 3 Tesla MRI that told me I was 75% probable of prostate cancer, which is why I explain I'm a man to woman trans prostate cancer, and followed that treatment scheme, and I'm totally in remission. And my PSA reading, and my last reading was 5.5. And I think it should work for everybody because we all have interstitial fluids. We all have problems with acidity. It's a mark of a metabolic resistance, metabolic syndrome, and it's indicative of injury to the mitochondria from sugars and seed oils. So if you can support the mitochondria, are we done?
All right. Thank you very much, Wendy.
Come on.
You're welcome.
Every single time.
So were you diagnosed with prostate cancer, or did you only get the PSA test?
I was diagnosed 75% certain. They said, go and get a needle biopsy. And I said, I'm here because I don't want a needle biopsy because of the risks of that. So I talked to Dr. Don LeMay in Oregon Integrative Oncology, who has a website, and she had a video, and I looked this up, treating cancer with bicarbonate of soda, and that's what she does in her practice in Oregon Integrative Oncology with some other things, standard treatments. And she's turning them out left and right, curative cancer. And you haven't heard about this because the hurdle is the usual paradigm inertia, that it's too simple and we can't get any trials going. So I'm advertising it here and hoping people will pick it up and not take my word for it, but do the searches on the terms I've given you, like Don LeMay, Oregon Integrative Oncology, like her YouTube videos called Using Evolution to Treat Cancer. There's another paper by Dr. Marinaka in Japan. The other one I use is balsamic vinegar, and he explains the proposal of molecular mechanisms of weak organic acids intake induced improvement of insulin resistance and diabetes mellitus via elevation of interstitial.
These are sort of in opposite directions, though, right? Like baking soda on one side, but vinegar on the other?
Yeah, well, the vinegar actually helps the mitochondria because it's a weak organic acid. It only kicks in as it's subordinate to the pH of the blood volume and the cytosol volume. The interstitial fluid volume is 4 times the volume of the blood. Okay,
and it's got to be maintained. Cancer is such an interesting thing for theorizing about because I feel like it's kind of like telling people that they can escape death. Right? Like, who wouldn't want to escape? I have a hard time evaluating theories in the cancer space. 1, because it's variable. 2, because, I mean, clearly whatever people are doing inside of big pharma doesn't work, right? Like 97% failure rate of all of the drugs developed. So it's like, we clearly have no idea. I'm like, I don't know that like blood pH is any more like outrageous than a chemotherapy drug that like doesn't help.
Yeah,
breast cancer.
what's the literature standpoint on pH? Kate, do you know anything about this? I feel like
So I'm not in cancer, but I know bicarb has been used to treat lupus. So there's some, I guess, benefit. I don't remember what they thought the mechanism was. But if I were to just speculate, I probably would think that it would have to do with somehow shifting the microbiome, because like if you eat a lot of sweets and carbs and like whatever the standard American diet is, you produce a lot of like overgrowth of bacteria that produces a lot of acid, and maybe the bicarb kind of neutralizes that.
It does.
Yeah, but I don't know how that ties into like pH and interstitial fluid. And I know there's like a blood, like there was like that acidic diet or diet that lowers your acid levels, but that I think is not very well correlated with anything.
Like, isn't your body pretty damn well buffered against changes in pH?
For the blood. For the blood.
I see.
Blood has to be maintained between 7.35 and 7.45.
Hence the
So
interstitial
if you have an
fluid.
acid challenge, you get, the body will use PTH to exert, by calcium species, hydroxyapatite, out of the blood out of the bone to neutralize it. So it's constantly pulling the, hydroxyapatite out of calcium hydroxyapatite out of the bones to neutralize any acidity that occurs up. So that challenges the interstitial fluid because it's open to the outside via the gut and lungs. So it's the middleman between the cytosol and the blood.
Hey, Wendi, do you know Thomas Seyfried over at Boston College?
I sure do. And he's the guy who brought to my attention.
Yeah, we just did an amazing podcast with him yesterday. It's not out yet, but I'm super excited to share it with the world.
You bet. He rediscovered the Warburg effect.
He's a complete badass. I mean, the kind of recovery rates he's getting for some of these super aggressive brain tumors is unbelievable.
Glioblastoma. Decreased glioblastoma.
Yeah, I mean, I got my start like after college working on glioblastoma in a lab, and it was just so depressing. I had to move out of the field. I mean, they hadn't made progress, not only in the entire time I'd been working in it, but in presumably the last 100 years, they hadn't really moved the needle on survival rates for these patients. I mean, maybe a couple months.
Well, you probably know, Shilo, that it's downstream from insulin resistance. Okay,
it's all tied up, it seems like.
Yeah, insulin resistance is like so core to so much chronic disease. And even like you mentioned the balsamic vinegar, I don't know if it's due to the balsamic per se, but vinegar definitely improves insulin resistance.
Well, anything with acetic acid.
Yeah. I would think balsamic vinegar wouldn't be the best just because it's so sweet.
It tastes better.
Yes, Seyfried would say put down the sugar.
A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Hey, I think the younger balsamic vinegars are not quite as sweet. Like, I think that you have to get those.
Guys, if you haven't heard Thomas Seyfried, his whole thing is that you got to stop eating sugar if you have cancer. There's just no way around it.
Like anyone with chronic disease shouldn't be eating added sugar or really processed food. Period.
Yeah, 88% of Americans have one or more of the 5 markers of insulin resistance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so it's, it's something that's on the way. And I worked for Bobby Kennedy Jr. for a year to get him into HHS because he knows about this and he's there now. So
that must feel good.
This ought to be spreading soon.
I mean, I look forward to anybody who can offer hope to people because the idea of getting...
Are we endorsing the Maha movement?
We are.
Hell yeah. Yeah, let's get healthy. It feels good to be healthy, though, for real.
Absolutely.
If for no other reason.
And homeostasis, homeostasis has always been the basis of health. When we were in 8th grade, we were told the point of medicine is to help the body's homeostasis. And if your pH is acid, you're not in homeostasis. So get it back in homeostasis and go from there and see what else you need to do.
Absolutely.
Amen.
All right, we got to let you go.
Thank you, Wendi.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's a problem that has a solution, and I believe that we're moving towards it.
I believe it. All right,
Thank you guys. Come on, give it up for Wendi. Come on.
All right, we got Ricky Cisco, who is coming onto the panel. And then somebody just asked what screen name is showing, and it's B*******M********. All right, we got Phil Sportel, who is on deck after Ricky Cisco. Thank you to Wendi. All right, I am really excited for this. Ricky, welcome. So Ricky has been a fixture.
Guys, come on, give it up for Ricky Cisco.
He deserves it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey.
What's up, guys? All right.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you. We got you loud and clear.
Cool.
We will count you in just like always, and then we'll talk to you a little bit because it's really good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. Yep.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, blow our minds.
All right. We're living in a time when archetypes, the ancient patterns that we use to look into the past, are becoming exponentially faster, moving through society into people as information is as we are bombarded by information. Archetypal possession is becoming increasingly prolific in societies. And we need to develop a moral framework around archetypes in order to be better at predicting what's going to happen in the future and prevent bad outcomes as we no longer have good moral frameworks. A lot of them are stagnant and they lack the language to keep up with how fast things are happening and the confusion about reality and morals.
Hey, there it is. A lot of morality tonight.
Seconds. That was incredible.
59 seconds.
Wow.
Amazing,
wow.
amazing,
I would expect
amazing,
no less
amazing.
from the great Ricky Cisco. All right, that was very well done. Okay, so the idea is that there are archetypes, number one. Number two, that they, as we accelerate as a society, begin to move more quickly through people where kind of people are possessed by them momentarily and then they move through them. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, so archetypes, if we think of them as nesting dolls from subatomic through molecular, and you have these universal patterns that share characteristics and give rise as reality emerges through life forms, intelligence. That's where you get a lot of your synchronicities from, either in nature when you have something strange happen, a symbol pop up. Is that the archetypes are just sort of like that morphogenetic field that Rochelle Drake talks about. There's something about there's some principle that scales through reality that has patterns embedded in it, and we're getting to a point where, as the equilibrium of reality and societies are ourselves, we lack good moral frameworks with how fast information and new ideas, celebrities, we're in a hypnotic trance. And I think the archetypal language is the new mathematics of morality, going deeper. Jung was able to predict so much of the future based off of his formalization of archetypal language and studying the motifs and patterns throughout reality. And now we're hitting this point where we must discern reality as clearly as possible as we watch people like presidents like Donald Trump, the trickster king archetype, and you see these Elon Musk, you have this Uranus type Prometheus energy, and you see the archetypal war happening. And
so does that mean that you know how it ends?
I believe that it helps us see around the corner a little bit. And that's the best we can do, because...
Do you think the ancients were better? Do you think the ancients had better mythological structures for understanding these events that are happening to us now?
Well, their mythological structures were in 10s, 20, 100,000 year cycles of there's a reason why the zodiac is the oldest. It might be the oldest technology we have of a cycle with unique attributes that flow in a wheel. And the
you're
12,
talking about the precession, basically.
Yeah, the precession. And if the earthly cycles have, if there's any important thing to pass on, it would be what happens to the earth on long-term scales. And the fact that the zodiac is tied in with a mythic archetypal structure tells me that that was the technology they probably found extremely important. It's sticky because we're made of it. And if archetypes are the nesting dolls of reality, that's how we get that's how we are able to link synchronicities, are linked patterns, from a distance, I guess.
I love it. By the way, Ricky, man, you've been with us since the absolutely beginning, way before we had a podcast and everything else. I met Ricky. I found him.
I predicted you guys would be one of the biggest shows because you guys are archetypal. You guys are the community. You like Gemini, right? You have the two communicators that elucidate thought, language, formalize it, and you guys are archetypally possessed in a good way, in the sense of you guys are riding a wave, and I know you guys feel it because alchemy is getting inner knowledge from working with your hands in reality. So as you build things, build wood, paint, whatever, those lessons of vision and get mirrored into self-knowledge, right? So your music, everything you guys put forward, it is coming out into this, and it's needed because there's nothing like it. So that's how I kind of knew it would be special, and this is still the beginning too,
I'm blushing.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. I appreciate the kind words. Ricky's a hell of a artist himself, right? How long have you had this cabinet business? You do these incredible. You post these pics on Facebook of these manners that you're just reconstructing, these parlors and shit. It's off the hook.
I do a lot of stuff. Work with historical finishing, really 1800s. So I get exposed to a lot of really cool art motifs that go back a long time, and I'm going to be going into making altars. I want everyone to have an altar in their home.
Whoa.
Because we are stripped of a sacred space. No one has one. And I believe that altars are a root foundation in everyone's home, where we put our objects that we come across that are important to us, and it's out in the open. We don't put it under our bed in a shoebox. We don't have any altars anymore.
Hell yeah, we got one in our bedroom too.
I
just thought of that when you said that. I was like, oh, that's what that is.
It was a mantle in the old house, but we reconstructed it, new and improved when we moved.
Kate, what are your thoughts?
I guess I'm wondering, is it more important to predict archetypes, or is it more important to kind of somehow shape them to avoid the more negative and harmful ones? Like, is there value to like a proactive approach in this situation?
Yeah, so so Formscapes, it does a lot of work with putting archetypal language together, and he said, I liked his thing about reductionism, but he's very good at reducing complex ideas into words. So I think once we get the language, once we internalize it with introspection and doing things in nature, I think that in turns develops a prophetic sense. When we look at the news, we see reality. Where if there's a movement that starts to happen or some things catch on, we may be able to have an insight to where that could lead, to when maybe we need to put the brakes on it and let things balance, because the world seems like it's always trying to balance, and then it gets into these points where the swings get really crazy, where it seems like that's right now. People live in different realities. And so I think if there was a moral language that was stripped of sort of some...
It almost seems like a mythological language or something. Like, I mean, morality and mythology are, of course, reflexive in some way, because mythology encodes morality.
Yeah, exactly. And so we live in a fictional world where we watch movies and we're all on the same page about the movies, but when in reality we have different heroes, different villains, and they're villains and heroes at the same time. And that's because we are unconsciously dealing with archetypal knowledge and seeing how they interact and being able to just recognize them, and for better or worse, yeah.
So there's this crazy thing about this, which is that I think that there's an interplay between technology and morality, and the archetypes that we have don't have stories really about the sorts of challenges that we face technologically. Like
Yeah,
making a
Matrix.
machine god or fame or
Matrix, for
Matrix
sure.
things. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I brought that up before. It
Mhm.
seems like the Matrix
did.
is kind of the myth of our times in some sense, but I wonder if it's going to be
You
superseded
literally
soon.
said that. Yeah, you literally said that it was the Matrix is sort of this new, because it works so well, because that's sort of the
to
weird
the
thing.
point, like up to like the first half of the movie, up to the red
Yeah.
pill thing, shit goes kind of crazy after that. Like the one thing that bothers me about the Matrix is that it doesn't have any human overlords in charge, right? It's like I feel like no matter how powerful these AI machines get, somebody is going to be still have the keys to the castle, and so that the Matrix kind of leaves that element out of the story, which bothers me.
I agree. Which is weird, though, is that the overlord is the human archetypes that they can't get rid of. They are trying to build this matrix, and the archetypes will emerge no matter what they do. There will be a trickster that comes and changes things, and there's nothing they can code to do with it. So they're constantly trying to balance the archetypes. That's the whole weird thing about the Matrix, is they're trying to weight the archetypes to suppress the Neo, the emergent property that they can't squish. And it's so, in a way, the human construct is still more powerful than the AI.
An optimistic note to end on.
I love it. All right, Ricky, we're gonna keep things moving along.
That was
man.
wonderful.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
so
by,
much
dude.
for
Take care.
coming.
All right, give it up for Ricky,
bye-bye.
Cisco, guys.
Thank
Come
you.
on. Come on. Do better than that. Let's do better than that.
All right. So I know that I told Philip Sportel that Philip Sportel is on deck. But we have a real treat. I've just noticed that a dear friend of the podcast, absolute, just visionary, creative person who has spent the last couple of years exploring and trying to understand the nature of consciousness and qualia and experience, is with us to do a presentation. And so we have Andrés Goméz Emilsson of Qualia Research Institute, who is going to take 1:60 seconds to tell us some absolutely mind-blowing facts about the nature of consciousness. All right, we got you in 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, everybody. Yes, today I'm going to present about the concept called valence structuralism. This is the idea that what makes an experience feel good or bad has to do with the actual structure of the experience rather than what it is about. In particular, this was introduced by Mike Johnson, one of the co-founders of QRI. We've been developing this concept since 2015. And, a core idea is that what makes the experience feel good or bad has to do with the coherence, the quality, the harmony of attention, as opposed to what it is about that you're experiencing. Think of, an orgasm, or, for example, biting into something sweet, or the pleasant laminar flow when you rest in your bed after a hard day's work. The quintessential nature of all of these very pleasant experiences has to do with the harmony, the vibrations, the way in which sensations are put together and synchronized, rather than, hey, what is this experience about? In other words, we're talking about a music theory of consciousness rather than some kind of understanding of the narrative flow. Thank you.
All right. That's how you do it. Take notes.
Heck yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. It's good to see you.
Oh, great to see you. Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. I was very happy to receive it and happy to drop by and talk a little bit about hardcore philosophy for a little while.
Are you in the middle of your meditation right now?
actually, I'm gonna start tomorrow. There was a little bit of a change in schedule, but yes. For context, I had originally said like I was gonna be in the middle of a meditation retreat, so I would just drop by from from the sky just to deliver my little pitch. But yes,
I was like shockingly lucid for fresh out of a meditation session.
So,
Yes.
so what? Just to be clear, so this is like a harmonic theory of attention. It sounds like what is the problem with the standard understanding of attention? Like, what issue are you seeking to address with this?
Yeah, maybe to clarify, this is a theory of valence. In other words, like what makes an experience feel good or bad. And the core claim is that the coherence of attention is essentially quintessential to the feeling of well-being. Because there are accounts of like what pleasure and pain are all about that are more about like the way in which sensations fit into a narrative, right? Like for example, you may say something like, "Hey, I want to have a car," but why do you want to have a car? Well, because I don't know, it's gonna make me feel like high status among my friends, or like it's gonna allow me to take places. That type of response is kind of very narrative, right? Like, whereas if you really examine, very deeply, what is the reward that you're actually getting from, owning a car? In this case, in addition to, convenience and so on, just like introspect on the moment-to-moment sensation. And okay, like if you're actually being happy because you now have a car, that will actually manifest in the body as like sensations in the body, this like sense of security, sense of ease, flow. And it's actually those sensations that feel good, not the semantic content about how the car fits into your life. So it's kind of like realizing, the thing that makes the movie, so to speak, feel good is more kind of the soundtrack that is giving rise, that is being used to add power and livelihood to it, as opposed to just the narrative, right? Like, because you could experience any narrative you want with a very kind of a neutral tone, right? Like you actually need kind of this like soundtrack to make it feel good or bad. And the claim is that the soundtrack is essentially the coherence and the quality of attention and how that is changing over time.
Kate, what do you think about this? This is the first time you're hearing it.
Isn't that fundamental to a lot of like meditation traditions, period? That the quality of your attention like determines your outlook and experience.
Absolutely. I can comment on that. Yes, there is a very important distinction in meditation techniques, in general, like anything having to do with altering consciousness, which I call the distinction between a review and a recipe. So a recipe is kind of the steps that you need to take in order to create a particular state of consciousness or tune into a state of consciousness. The review is how do you describe that experience? A very, very stark difference here is, or a very good example is baking a cake, right? Like there can be a very, elaborate recipe for how to bake a cake, but just by reading it, you don't really know how the cake is going to turn out. And then you need to somebody actually review it. And, the review will say things like, well, the onset of the chocolate feeling came on really sharp, right? Like it has a very high attack or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that is like different than the recipe. So I would argue that a lot of meditation traditions, for example, they might give you a recipe that is actually along the lines of, hey, focus on, Shiva or Krishna, or, make an offering to the gods and things like that. I would say that's a recipe. But then if you follow the recipe, hey, actually, the way in which that cashes out into an enhanced feeling of well-being is in how that repeating that over and over changes the coherence and the harmony of your attention. In other words, even if you pray to the gods and you do, everything by the book, if at no point that cashes out into, hey, you actually feel more harmonized, then you're not actually going to feel better. And I think that distinction is pretty significant for a lot of meditation teachers may actually not realize it. And I think it's a wasted opportunity for like better instructions, because once you really pay attention to the harmony and coherence of attention, you can debug what's going on in your meditation better.
Yep. Sounds very wise.
Yeah, damn. I got nothing, man. That's freaking awesome. Andrés, it's always awesome to hear from you, man. I think we haven't talked in a while, so we should loop back around and hang out again, get another podcast going.
Totally.
see what you're up to. I saw you've been talking a little with Ogi Ogus too, which I thought we brought you two together for a conversation about a year ago, and I saw there was a little bit of Twitter dialogue happening where you were checking out Steven Grossberg's work and stuff. So maybe you have some thoughts we can get into later.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm trying to contact the axiomatized minds with mixed success, but
oh yeah.
But yeah, no, I love Ogi and his work. Super great. Maybe one quick thing I'll mention too about the valence structuralism is that maybe in the context of sound, I think is like in some sense pretty well understood, right? Like because we do have kind of a music theory of sound, and you can predictably tell when like two notes are going to be dissonant. But what we don't have, which is what we were building towards at my organization, is essentially a music theory, but for all sense modalities, right? Because even with the stroboscopic stimulation, for example, right, like these like flickering lights, which I recommend playing with them. They produce interesting patterns in the visual field and so on. One thing is to just put kind of like 10 hertz, which produces interesting visual effects. But much more beautiful is if you put kind of like 10 hertz together with 20 hertz together with 30, you kind of like actually harmonize
build
it.
A chord.
You can, and effectively you can like smoothen out and kind of like fine tune the patterns that you experience. And it's much more beautiful and kind of more human in a sense. Whereas you can actually produce visual dissonance in a very similar way. If you intersperse like, 10 hertz together with 11 hertz or 13 hertz, that's actually very jarring. It's kind of drags your attention and you're kind of like catching up and it's unpleasant. So, even though maybe one could argue that in the domain of sound, it's pretty well understood that, hey, harmony is what drives valence. The non-trivial claim here is that this generalizes to all sense modalities and even to things like thoughts. That like what an unpleasant thought has to do with kind of some kind of discordant relationship between the attention flow in your consciousness. And so it's really profound. It generalizes and maybe even might be a window into what the universe fundamentally wants. Right? Like fundamentally, the universe is not that it wants chocolate, doesn't want a chocolate cake. What it wants is a harmony in the field, which is a more abstract, more general, but very, very real property, I think.
Yeah, and color theory is another example of that visually.
Yes, absolutely.
What's the name of your organization?
Yeah, it's the Qualia Research Institute. With Qualia, for those who don't know in the audience, is kind of the blueness of blue, for example, like the way in which experience feels like, which is so hard to communicate. I'm not going to be able to explain what blue feels like if you have never experienced blue. But something that you can actually kind of explain is how to access, for example, specific meditation states. And that one, okay, like there is kind of a set of instructions and something that you can replicate and actually study in a rigorous fashion. And the same with exogenous stimulation. So we do a lot of things like body vibration and try to make sense of like which patterns in the body actually feel good and bad and what kind of things do they mimic, with the very overarching premise that any state of ill being or kind of illness or discomfort ultimately comes down to dissonance on some level of the predictive coding hierarchy. Somewhere in the system, there's something that is out of phase, and that is what is unpleasant. So if you're actually in a perfectly coherent state, there's no problem. Nothing feels bad in that context.
It'd be really amazing in the future to have a treatment for depression or for anything else that just you go into a machine and kind of like vibrates you a little bit and you walk out and you're like, I feel great.
Yes. Absolutely. We call we've worked in some prototypes of something like that. We used to call it among friends in a very non-serious way, like the anilotron, because it causes like neural annealing.
You should call it the anilotron in all spheres and environments. That's an amazing name.
Okay. Time to go public.
I would get into the anilotron, no problem.
I don't know, man. It's we need to talk for longer. That's all there is to
all right,
it.
Shiloh's,
we'll get you back out here.
Shiloh's playing you off the stage. She's got the vaudevillian hook. Thank you so much.
We
do have to keep it moving.
It's always wonderful to see you, though.
Thank you.
Sounds really intuitive too.
Awesome.
Come on, give it up for Andrés. Come on, people. Come on. Come on.
You can
Come
be pleased,
on. What is
everybody.
wrong with you guys? Come on. All right. That's more like it.
All right. Take it easy. Thank you so much,
Bye,
guys.
Andrés. Thank you. All right, so we have Phil Sportel, who has also been with us for a long time. He is still in here. Let's see who we have on deck. Clap, 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 indeed. All right, Kate, you doing all right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just trying
Alright.
to breathe a little through the snows.
All right, who do we
Hey,
have?
folks.
Who? That is Philip Sportel. All right,
That's
on
me,
deck
hey.
we have Jack Neefus. So Jack, get yourself ready, and then Phil, welcome. How are things?
Good. I'm working for an AI company right now, and it's giving me lots of reasons to think about intelligence.
All right. Well,
Excited.
you have 60 seconds on the clock.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hit it.
Okay. In Journey of the Mind, Ogi Ogas shows us how minds scale, and in his many videos, Michael Levin asks how consciousness moves from its own perspective, and I've long been fascinated by confusion. These led me to a framework I call information scaling. When we internalize the world, at first, molecules are activated as either-ors. They're either activated or not. Then either-ors add up into ranges, aka nerve impulses. These ranges are compiled in parallel as vectors. These vectors are extrapolated into the past and future as trajectories. Sequences of trajectories are remembered as paths, and paths are reasoned among to produce goals. Goals get mythologized into values. When we act on the world, information moves the other way, from values and instincts down to molecular either-ors. If this seems familiar, we're on the right track. Now treat this as a graph. Information scaling on one axis and complexity on the other. This forms a generative model and a way to measure, compare, and predict the qualities of any mind, human, animal, computer, or alien.
All right. There it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry guys.
No, that was excellent. I'm sorry, you also came in under time. We
Oh shit, I did. Oh my god, I
that was
practiced,
excellent.
but I
No,
think I
no, no,
rushed.
that was perfect.
Okay,
That was
that's
literally
great.
a second below time. We were conferring because Shilo was like, we were on the wrong screen, and I was like, are we? And then we both had an existential crisis. But I think
I'm
we
having one too.
we fixed it. Okay. So Philip, you have presented basically an idea of.
These are quanta. If sorry, I forget the last guy's name, but he's studying qualia. These are almost like quanta of mind.
Isn't that the first? Hold on one second. What's
Yeah.
the?
Okay.
Sorry, technical problems.
Oh, that one. Okay. I'm sorry. I saw 4 faces on the screen.
Our heads are just enormous compared to Philip. It looks ridiculous.
Sorry.
We got one job, Nastia.
I've
We'll
been
give you a
fired from every
synthesizer
job
next
I've ever
time,
had.
All right, sorry, Philip. Carry on.
All good. What's up?
What's up,
What do you
man?
guys think?
It's so hot in here. I'm
It is
sorry.
really hot.
It's summer has arrived to Southern Oregon, and I feel like I'm sweating. But I'm also very excited about the ideas.
All right, so what problem are we addressing here? Let's start there.
So, I don't know. The problem I've been trying to solve is why does my dog sniff the way she does? And this framework has given me a way of kind of understanding how, because dogs, their sense of smell is wired directly into their sense of sight. So I'm like, what is sight smell? If we hear see, this is what we mostly do. We hear see. What is sight smell? And it's helped me work all this stuff out. But really, like, I've used this as a way of constructing plots and stories. I've used this framework to compose songs. I've used it to create AI models. It's a really, really robust framework. It applies everywhere. You can look at political systems this way. You can look at one of the really interesting things that popped out of this is that most of what we do consciously is reason between paths and goals. So most conscious activity is either looking at a bunch of paths and trying to figure out which goal to get to, or thinking, like, having a goal and trying to figure out which path to follow. It also reveals the limitations of large language models, which is all they do. And if this whole model is the way intelligent life operates, all large language models do is they take our goals and figure out which paths to apply. That's it. And so this is why they're so limited and why they won't ever do the things that are being promised of us, like large scale intelligence, because they aren't operating from core value principles and deciding on their own goals and reasoning paths and doing all this stuff that you have to do. The other thing I've realized is that a lot of you can analyze personality types through this. Some people are trainer performers, which means they move between paths and trajectories. Some people are reasoner imaginers, which means they move between paths and goals. And some people, like Donald Trump, are intuitive mythologizers. So they move between goals and values. So, I mean, if you look at Trump, all he does is he has this myth of himself he's trying to perpetuate. So he primarily moves.
Don't we all?
Well, we do, but this is all he does. This is his whole thing. We all kind of have like a little bit of an inner myth, inner archetypes, or whatever you want to call it, that we use, but that's all he does. He just wants to be a legend forever. And if you look at all his behavior, it all points to that, self-mythologizing.
Anastasia also wants to be a
People
legend
say
forever,
he's greedy, but sorry, go ahead.
I asked you a week ago what my shadow was. Have you just discovered it?
Yeah.
That's cool, man. Do you know Rex Reapy by any chance?
I have to write this down. What's how do you spell that last name?
Reipe.
Reapy, yeah.
Reapy.
We had him on the show a while back, but he has this complex system that sounds very parallel for assigning personality types, which was really interesting. It took me a while to get the hang of like why it was useful, and I guess it comes down to really understanding the people that you're interacting with.
Well, I think what I've realized is most people are really good at memorizing paths. Why? Because predicting trajectories is too hard. We know this from physics. You can't, even turbulence, you can't predict every molecule in turbulence. You can't predict the path of every planet in the galaxy or whatever, right? You can't. So what we do is we memorize paths instead. So most people are really, really good at that. They're good at path memorization. They're bad at setting goals. They're bad at trajectories. They're bad at mythologizing, but they're really good at memorizing paths. The bulk of the human population, if you look at the bell curve.
Okay, and why is memorizing a path not good enough?
No, it's fine. It's perfectly fine.
Oh no, I'm not saying that. I inherently sound combative when I say things.
Okay.
I didn't mean to start
what do you
a fight.
mean?
I'm sorry.
So what are you asking?
I mean, like, exactly. I'm asking, like, okay, so what is the limitation of being a path-only condition?
Well, you have trouble. Have trouble imagining goals. Like you have trouble conceiving of goals. So often you choose goals that other people impose on you. So if you think about the average person engaged in employment, they're usually below the management level. They're not making those goals. Most of their day is spent finding a path to someone else's goal. Do you know what I mean? So we're not that great at doing that. So we have fewer people who are good at setting goals, which is why our society organizes the way it does. We have even fewer people who are good at mythologizing, right? So it naturally forms kind of a pyramid where the structure of our own consciousness is mimicked externally, and some people perform functions at each sort of strata. And weirdly enough, art is something that tries to occupy every level in this system. So you look at music, you look at novels, anything where the artist is trying to present you with a complete message. One of its defining characteristics is that it accounts for each one of these levels.
Kate, what do you think?
Sorry, I know it's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think which part to respond to. Skip me for now.
I like the idea that theorists are kind of mythologizers, where we have inadvertently created like mythology club.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the other things that I've realized is that the reason why science is having a hard time defining intelligence is because intelligence is based on training and memorization. There aren't it's not like there's a universal set of principles. We train and memorize some tiny little subset of all experience. So it's just this very parochial thing.
I guess detractors would say there's different kinds of intelligence, like spatial intelligence, like certain athletes are like very good.
Oh yeah. No, that's in it. People who are good at like paths and trajectories, which is my terms. They're good at training and performing. So when you go from a trajectory to a path, you're training. So you're learning a movement. When you're performing, you're going the other direction. You're turning an internalized path into a trajectory, right? So that's right there inside the model. There are people who are good at that kind of thing. The different kind of this is the weird thing. Like I've this model's kind of based a little bit in like data types in computer science, but what I've found is it just kind of seems to apply absolutely everywhere. It's hard to find a place you can't look at these types of information and find them. And I think when you're trying to think about intelligence, looking at neurons is the wrong thing. Looking at molecules is the wrong thing. You have to look at information. What is happening to the information is it's going deeper into the mind, and it's transforming. It's obviously transforming because our conscious experience isn't the experience of our nerve endings, right? So there has to be transformations that happen. This is my attempt to kind of map how those transformations happen. The data types transform. So goals might be something that possess the entire mind. Paths might be a part of the mind, and then you go down and down and down all the way down to molecules. And I think moving into an era where AI is becoming more prominent, and it seems to be able to sort of computers can now sort of take on any aspect of the sequence. It's important for us to know this sequence. It's important for us to be able to think in terms of this sequence because we can insert ourselves anywhere we want.
I love it. Philip, by the way, tell people a little bit about who you are. Where are you at right now?
I've done everything. I was.
Where are you physically located? Let's start there.
I'm in Toronto.
I'm in a house.
Where am I physically located? I work for an AI company, but I've done pretty much every creative endeavor known to humankind, and I have found a remarkable set of connections among all of these different things, and kind of this formula, which is a really mundane formula, but it's a way of doing or learning almost anything.
Cool, man.
I think that having these large-scale structures for thinking through things is interesting because something that kind of connects to Ricky from before is that we have to assume, first of all, I just want to say that like every single one of these has been about something that Shilo and I have talked about in the last week in private conversations. So
yeah, this is a really like metaphysical paradigm shift today.
I was freaking out when I heard was Kehlan at the beginning. I was like, oh, he's talking about the same thing as me because we are. We're coming at it from different things. But
this whole episode I've tried to do is this is crazy. Nobody's presented a single physical theory tonight. This is nuts.
I've tried to identify the layers, and what I didn't get into is the mechanisms between each layer, like really getting down to like how does it happen, and what it is a pattern of like pooling and parallelizing of information. So you take all of these molecular individual signals that get pooled into a nerve impulse, and then it gets paralyzed, and then pooled and paralyzed. It's a really interesting thing. So it makes me wonder, like Ogie's axiomatic minds, like where would they fit on this?
I think that's an interesting question, and I think that we should revisit it. I love the idea of there being an archetype to pick. Like, if I was to connect a bunch of these different presentations, it would be that there is some spark inside of each of us that we have to pay attention to in order to find the archetype to inhabit that is the most resonant, in order to be able to actually achieve the top-down process of changing the world around us.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm gonna take the last word. Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, all good.
All right. So
thanks for having me.
It's always good to see you, Philip.
It was wonderful.
Guys, give him a hand. Come on.
Yes.
Hey.
I love how Shilo works the crowd. So I know I said Jack Neefus was up next, but we have another friend of ours that we're going to put up right now. And so what we're going to do is we are going to take a little detour to talk to our friend Michael Hughes, who is working on the intricate and multifaceted, multi-layered interactions of water inside of cells. So the last time that he came on the show, he proposed that the way that cells know who they are is based off of the osmotic pressure in the nucleus, which sounds terribly nerdy, but then it's really fantastic because it basically says that the state of water that's inside of the cell is functionally the way that it knows who it should be in the world. And so we're going to do Jack Neefus after this, and then following Jack Neefus, we have somebody I'm really excited for. We have David the Hilster on deck. And so for right now, we're going to talk to Michael Hughes, who looks fantastic. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
All right.
I thought you were wearing a lab coat for a second. All right.
Yeah, it's pretty invasive, right? It's pretty
Legit.
shirt.
That was definitely part of the vibe. Okay.
All right, we got a minute on the clock. Here we go. We're going to count you in on
I'm
3.
sorry. Hold
Nasty
on.
is
I'm so bad.
technologically challenged.
We're at 2 minutes. No. Okay.
All right, Michael Hughes on 3. 1, 2, 3. Hit it.
So the problem that we're trying to solve, of course, as always, is water, right? And so from the solution I propose that we might be missing is the piezoelectric properties of water. And so what piezoelectricity is like with a quartz crystal, if you apply pressure, you get a voltage in some way. So I'm proposing that with water, if you have pressure in the correct area, you get a voltage. And this is kind of illustrated by water in the glass at the bottom, and the bulk is just random in all directions. There's no real orientation. But at the interface, there's this weird pressure differential and this weird interface with the air where you do get an electric voltage. And if you zoom in on a human body, interfaces are everywhere with protein. And so with protein, the water touching the surface does have these orientation biases that you might see at interface, while the bulk tends to lose that. And so I propose that one of the things that we're missing about water's behavior is potentially at the microscopic scale, this piezoelectricity property of it.
Another perfect minute.
Boom, perfect. Like right on the dot. All right, guys, come on, give it up for him. Give it up for him. Come on. Michael Hughes, complete presentation. That is, again, how you should do it.
It is. I have to say, before Michael gets too much further, I have to say, I'm sorry, I haven't finished your paper yet. I'm working on it. I promise I haven't forgotten.
I sent you 75 pages and I expect you to read it immediately. That'd be absurd. Thank you so much for taking a look at it, nonetheless.
But the one thing I didn't get is, what is the problem with water? How is the way that people treat water right now? I know it probably is obvious to you, but, maybe it's worth reminding everybody.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of times when, we say problems, it's things don't work like we used to, right? Our equations don't match our data. And so what I'm proposing is that our MD simulations of water don't capture everything. Some MD models, MD stands for molecular dynamics, right? You put every atom of a water simulation into the computer and just play it forward and see what happens. And it captures some properties pretty well. We generate a lot of good data with this, but not every model captures every part of water perfectly, right? Some are honed in for some parts more than others. And this creates an issue. So AlphaFold is the protein folding problem, but through genetics, not through physics, right? You can't put the protein into the machine and get the structure out. It uses genetic relationships through time and the information transferred with that to get that. So I'm proposing that if we put piezoelectricity and some of the concepts associated with it into our water models, we might actually be able to get good physical predictions of motions of proteins, not just stopped in place, right? And so
is it fair for me to just dumb this down and say that dark matter. That water is kind of the dark matter of biology. It's always there. It's in every single process, every reaction, every single protein translation. 100% of biology happens in the presence of water, but it doesn't really step on stage much when you're learning biology, say grad school or in the literature.
That's completely right, in my opinion, and also in my training, right? And what's so interesting is, right, when we zoom out of our solar system, we start having to implementing dark matter immediately to make our models and our math work. And so I'm kind of proposing a similar issue with biology, that as we try to zoom out, get everything in place in space and time with each other, our osmotic pressure works well for a small microcosm. We can predict small simulations with it. When we start incorporating a lot of things, something doesn't happen. Right. And so I'm trying to propose ways that we can address or mediate, kind of have some hypothesis to test for how we we get there to add it up correctly.
Kate, you got any thoughts on this stuff? First time you're hearing Michael?
I was just wondering, so does that imply that there are other molecules that also have these properties? So like why focus only on water?
Yeah, so most of what is piezoelectric is quartz, right? So like especially like in watches or something, right? You vibrate quartz and you have this like voltage with it. So it's a very practical tool. We use this all the time, right? What's really curious is that when you're zoomed out of a solution of water, there's no piezoelectricity. But when you start to zoom into the interface, you can maybe like develop some situations where you do get piezoelectricity possible.
And I think Kate's asking, like, I think if I understand you right, Kate, you're saying what about the other biomolecules?
Oh yeah, that was my question. I thought that's where this was going, but maybe.
Sorry. Oh, so the other side, right? So what I'm saying is that so protein is dissolved in water, and that makes our cells work, right? So proteins are the other half to this equation.
Do they exhibit like piezoelectric behavior as well?
So, if you have water alone, you don't have piezoelectricity, and if you have protein alone, you probably don't have piezoelectricity. But you mix them together, and suddenly you have it, right? And this is collagen. And
because you need that interface, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, you get it,
Can
right?
Can I do it on like DNA though? Can I do it like on RNA, or is there something about the protein?
Yeah, this is where we run into the limit of my knowledge and why like
is that what you were asking?
This stuff. I think that I know for certain it's like measured in collagen, but I expect it to be really dominant in negatively charged molecules like DNA, and also anywhere we find like easy water from Gerald Pollack, right? And I expect it to be present there, but this is something that needs testing and something that, I'm all game to like look into. But this is the limit of my knowledge. And I think that our biomolecules in particular tend to structure things where you can get piezoelectricity, but the exact arrangement of the proteins and water that lead to this is where like the frontier is, right?
So what experiments would you need to do to,
Kate's in here asking the hard questions. Yeah.
I love this. Like, what's the next step? Like, how would you prove it? It doesn't sound like it's very difficult if you're just measuring.
No, so we have
to sound like a PI right now, talking to
like, hurry up and get this in Nature. What's your problem?
They're delinquent grad student.
I walk out of work and into work. I've got the lab coat. We're good to go. So,
can you imagine if she showed up to talk to your PI and she was wearing a leopard mask?
I hope so.
A total straight face. You've actually never seen her face.
Never.
So, I think that what's missing is not people have shown that piezoelectricity exists. I think that at a certain point it can like make people relatively confident that like it'll show up in some places. What we need to do is show it as a signaling platform for biomolecules. So in signaling in the body, we often think of like insulin or molecules that go somewhere and transmit a signal, right? But what the frontier for making this useful to like going farther with this is to get some mechanism and figure out how the cell registers this and transfers this into like a biological signal. So what I'm saying is that in astronauts' bones, in space, astronauts' bones deteriorate. But on Earth, where you're constantly stressing those bones with pressure, you have strong bones, right? So
cells have mechanoreceptors.
Right, so that's what I'm looking at. At mechanoreceptors, I expect you to find piezoelectricity. And that's where I would like move my test to.
What would So I kind of understand how signaling pathways work, right? So you have a molecule that attaches to a receptor that's on the surface of the cell. Then there's the signaling cascade that's inside of the cell, which eventually reaches the nucleus. And then the nucleus does stuff by making RNA and making proteins. And so there's this like cyclical pathway between external signal to the like central processing area out to some kind of effect. What would... I need to have a nerd sniff in this soundboard.
That was perfect, right? Like that was out of a textbook. I think that was extraordinary.
Yeah, I was like, what's wrong with that? Was there something wrong in there?
That's
pretty spot on.
But I think Shilo was just making fun of me because he's just like quietly being like nerd. But I'm like, we're all nerds here. I keep trying to say we should change the name of the podcast to Nerdlandia.
I feel like you could still pass freshman biology after all these years, which is amazing.
Could. I actually feel like I won't say it. What's the mechanism of action of piezoelectricity in the cell? Like, how is it do you have a sense of how you would expect it to fit into the story?
Yeah. So water and like normalized is not piezoelectricity. So piezoelectricity requires that when you apply pressure, that it requires like there's no piezoelectricity when a crystal is centrosymmetric or when an area has like centrosymmetric. So there's a certain symmetry as you look around the environment where it's never violated. Piezoelectricity, like in quartz, comes from when you put pressure in a certain direction, it violates that, so it's not centrosymmetric. So now you get a net charge building up because it's not symmetric in every direction. You do get this net charge. So the interface is what perturbs water to give it like a non-average orientation, right? It perturbs in a certain direction to respond to that interface. And I propose that in that small area, you do get like some piezoelectricity properties where it can transmit this information. And so what's different about piezoelectricity being transmitted compared to a signaling molecule like in normal biology is that it's much faster, right? It's like the speed of sound, right? It's like a completely different beast. And so we might like miss this in what we're looking for if we don't look for in the correct area, right? It's not a physical molecule that goes and arrives there and turns something on. It's far like deeper and stranger. And that's, I think, why we like.
I think that you've just like invented biological archetypes.
I know, yeah, right. We need
to line up with everything else that's happened tonight.
Well, I think water might play into the overall. It might be some sort of Rosetta Stone for the conscious elements of the universe at the end of the day. Water is going to be a star player in the future. I'm saying it right now. But and to that end, by the way, so we're having this cosmology conference in June, and y'all should come on out. But I think the next one we're going to do is either going to be about water, or water is going to be a big piece of the story, and it will be biological in nature.
This is how tuned in Shilo and I are. He does not know that I've written that in the chat.
I did not know that. Oh, man.
Oh, Michael's cat has arrived.
Oh. All right, Michael. Well, dude, we're going to do a full podcast about your ideas on this stuff really soon. And you're getting a paper together, so we're going to move it along. But it's always awesome to see you.
Thank you so much for coming. And I'm sorry for the scheduling twist.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks all for hanging out with me.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, Michael, give it up for Michael, guys. Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
Hey.
All right.
Guys. Who we got next?
We got Jack Neefus. Jack Neefus. And then after Jack Neefus, we have the one, the only, the great David de Hilster. I love your sex dance, man. That just sounds like LCD sound system right there. You gonna drop the beat on us?
Okay.
All right, welcome, Jack. I'm sorry, I was vibing too hard. Welcome.
Thanks. Before you start, are you giving a hard stop at 60 seconds or 75 seconds?
You know, that's a great question.
You know, I've been screwing it up tonight. I'm sorry. I got a lot of plates that I'm spinning right now. 60 seconds, I will give you the gong. Sorry,
no. 60 seconds, you hear the beep,
you will
beep,
hear
beep.
the beeper.
Okay.
I screwed it up before. I'm so sorry.
Don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah. All right. So the gong will come after we can't take it anymore.
And that's exactly right. I was going to say that.
But yeah, aim for 60 seconds.
It's a deeply subjective
Okay.
measure. You want to count us in?
Yeah, but hold on. We're going to count you in. All right.
Okay.
So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hit it.
Okay. The shape and movement of the cosmic web can be explained only if matter is being created gradually, diffusely, in an electrically polarized pattern, and if movement is driven by magnetic attraction and repulsion rather than by gravity. Because of the prospect of heat death, matter cannot be eternal, and the early universe was empty except for quantum fluctuations. Matter emerged when extremely large fluctuations created a single particle. Protons, being massive, have a higher energy barrier and are much less likely to form than electrons. However, when one proton is formed, it increases the chances of another proton forming nearby. This explains both the clustering in areas like the Great Attractor, as well as large-scale randomness. The cosmic web originated as more diffuse electrons were attracted by large masses of protons and formed enormous plasma filaments. Once there, some electrons combined with protons to form hydrogen atoms, resulting in a positively ionized gas. This gas was drawn back through the center of the filaments, through the cosmic web, and eventually recycled. I'll stop there.
Hey, come on, guys. Come on.
All right. We have our first physics
Is that a theory of
the
everything?
evening.
Yeah.
Does it qualify as a theory of everything or no?
Well, it's a start. It's kind of a lead into the electric universe, actually.
Interesting. All right, so wait, hold on. What is the problem we are addressing here?
The problem is an alternative to the Big Bang, or the formation of the universe.
And so the problem is the Big Bang.
Yes, people are looking at I think most people have seen pictures of the cosmic web. The question is, what conditions allow that to form? As simple as possible, with as few additions. The additions that I'm making are kind of modifications to this principle, where quantum fluctuations, which are the only thing existed, would give rise to a single particle.
So you're still assuming there was a beginning to the universe, but it's just different.
Not exactly. I don't think a matter was there eternally, but I think there had to be a first particle somewhere.
Anastasia.
Well, it's interesting because this feels big bouncy, right? So, okay. Backstory. Shilo, for as long as I have known him, has been a proponent of the eternal universe. And every single time that Shilo brings up the eternal universe...
I'm sorry, you guys, you don't have to clap for me. That's okay.
Shilo, I feel like I would usually get into a fight with Shilo about the topic of the internal universe, because I would get to a point where I was like, I don't understand how to argue against this, but I deeply don't like it. And so I would usually get into a bad mood and we wouldn't talk about it for another few months. And then eventually you'd bring it up again. And I have recently come around to this idea that like eternity is possible. And yet I'm still partial to theories of beginnings. Because I like beginnings. They're nice. They're neat.
Whoa, easy does it.
I think it's valuable because, I mean, there is something to be said about having an archetype for the universe, to return to the philosophical trends here, which recapitulates our own arc. Like the ultimate hero's journey is the journey of the universe, and we are simply just like little vassals in the galactic web. And so when you think of like the first object forming from this what does it form out of for you? Is it like singularity? Is it like undifferentiated soup that suddenly differentiates because of some kind of...
I'm taking the idea of quantum fluctuations and the idea that there can be pairs of particles that appear and disappear and are absorbed. However, but as an outgrowth of that, we know some areas where there are asymmetries, where there's a time asymmetry in some cases. There's also the concept of an island of stability. For example, there might be an island of stability in the 8th row of the periodic table. I think this is the minimum change to the known rules of nature to result in the formation of particles. People have often observed, when you see the pictures of the cosmic web, there's movement along the cosmic web towards the great attractor, and there's also shown to be a twist in these suggesting that they're very large plasma filaments.
And like is the galactic web like allowed to be there by the Big Bang theory? Because like I've heard that you're not supposed to be able to have large scale structures in the universe, right? Isn't it supposed to be anisotropic?
The cosmological principles that things are basically kind of the same everywhere.
Yeah,
the largest scale structures that we can see in the universe seem to resemble plasma fixtures. For example, the Great Wall, the Sloan Great Wall. There are not that many two-dimensional, very large objects that we know, except for potentially double walls or double layers. I think that the Sloan Great Wall started as a double layer between an area of positive charge, like a great attractor, and an area that was more negative, and eventually built up with multiple double walls until it's many millions of light years wide now.
Kate, what do you think? Big Bang? No Big Bang?
Eternal universe?
I think Big Bang.
Whose side are you on?
I don't know. I'm wondering how you came to these conclusions, and was it a Big Bang moment or?
No, I have a hard time with the Big Bang. I've been attracted to the idea of gradual diffuse creation for a long time, but I assumed it was neutral, and I could never make it work in a neutral universe. It just didn't develop right. I think it worked better if negative charge is diffuse and positive charge is more concentrated.
Wait, hold on, say that again. I didn't follow that.
That electrons are forming not evenly but more diffusely because they're less massive, they're simpler, they're more diffuse throughout the universe. Whereas a proton, either because it's more massive or because it's composed of 3 quarks, it would be a more maybe there have to be perturbations in all 3 quarks in order to get a proton. I don't know, but something makes it, one, much less common in the beginning, and two, it would facilitate the production of other protons in the same neighborhood.
It's really interesting. I have never really loved theories of everything.
You've never, I'm sorry?
I said I've never really loved theories of everything, and I think in part, I'm like, we've been arguing about this for like 2,000 years or more. Do you know, like, is there void and substance, or is there just substance, or is there just void? And then, like, people have just gone in circles for so long, and there's literally, like, Democritus is sitting in the corner, like, drunk on, like, lesbian wine, and he's, like, telling us about the fact that there's atoms. Somebody else in the corner is like, no, absolutely not. There's just the plenum. And I think that it's the way that you think about this is interesting. And I wonder if the next time that you come on, if there isn't like a smaller unit of the cosmos that you could explain by thinking along the same lines. Because I'm like,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a bunch of electric universe stuff, some at smaller levels. So
yeah, I think like I like the idea. I mean, I know that Kehlan is like you can build from big to small.
Yeah.
And he might be right about that. But come back and let's build from small to big.
Yeah.
And then maybe
galaxies are at smaller levels, so
yeah, exactly. Okay, so come back and do galaxies next time.
Great.
Okay, Jack, thank you so much. And Jack he's such a sweetheart. Came to our first conference, coming to our next conference, always at the Sunday chat.
Oh yeah.
An absolute gem of a person. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See you.
All right, we got David de Hilster. You know, I think we might only have time for David de Hilster. You know what? Yeah, let's close on David de Hilster. All right, David, I'm going to bring you in. We got 19 minutes until the end. We'll see after this plays out if there's time for one more. Casey's so sad. Mark, you guys have to come back next time. We'll do one another month. Same Zoom time, same Zoom place. All right, we got the Hilster in the room. Looks like he is under the sea. I love the nautical theme down to the shirt. It's excellent.
That's just blue screen. A real blue screen.
Man, you can add like a little bit of wooden trim to the edges, and I think the vibes.
I put some of my art back here, but it's really so close. But it's been crazy. It's great to see you guys growing, and I wish I'd been able to. I've been going nuts. I've been talking around the world on a computer programming language I invented 25 years ago for AI and NLP. I've given classes in India. I've got hired by Northeastern University. So we need to talk about the AI. It's not around the corner. It's not going to threaten us. I've been in that area for like 4 decades. But today I'm going to talk about physics.
All right. I love that. And yes, absolutely. Let's do it. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do this on 3. We're going to count you in. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, hit it.
All right. Light, gravity, magnetism, and electricity all travel at the speed of light, and therefore must be the same particle. It sounds preposterous, but this notion actually works remarkably well. So far, we've been able to describe all the forces in the universe with these four motions. Gravity is random motion of these particles. Magnetism consists of interacting orbits of these same particles. Light consists of waves of these particles traveling together like waves of bombers. And electricity are the particles flowing in one direction guided by a lattice of bodies such as atomic nuclei. These motions occur at all levels of the universe, which there are infinite, and reveal how electricity generates magnetic fields, how atoms emit light, how magnetism induces current. It also reveals how electrons are kept in orbit by a smaller gravitic field moving faster than the speed of light, and explains why Coulomb's and gravitational law equations are both inverse squares. With the four universal motions, we can visualize the entire universe without any mathematical equations. That's it.
Hey.
All right, not
right.
bad.
Come on, guys.
That was well done.
David the Hilster in the house. All right, man. So, unified field theory of...
Well, no, it's not really what it is. No.
Whoa.
Unified particle theory, sorry.
No, not even close.
Hold on. Is it a unified theory, though? Because I'm on board with that.
Well, it's not, I don't know if it's a unified theory, it's a model. And the problem with all the unified theories, and I'm a mathematician, I've got a bachelor's in mathematics, is that they're mathematical equations that are empirical equations. You look at the world as an engineer and says things move like this, and you make an equation for it, right? You don't say, oh, what is gravity, by the way? Oh, and what is magnetism? In fact, we don't even have a magneton. We have electric fields, Coulomb's law. You got a positive and negative. There's an attraction. Well, what is that force? The four universal motions, which we didn't discover them all. Lionel Denis did magnetism. My father found the wave-particle duality. He solved the wave-particle duality, at least a solution for it in 2015, when he said that light are basically particles flying together in waves. So you have particles and you have waves, and then electricity. So what we're saying is that gravity, light, electricity, magnetism are all the same particle. They just move differently. When they hit your eye, they're coming at you in waves, frequencies. When we have them orbiting, when you have electricity, which is the same particle going through a wire, they'll stay inside, but some of them go around on the outside and create these orbits. And those orbits, when they meet together, like Lionel Denis shows in the water, those will attract and repulse. So we didn't look for this and call it a theory of everything. But these four motions at all levels of the universe, not just this level, but the level below and the level below and the level above. So if you look at it, you can start to see that you can see and visualize everything in the universe: magnetic fields, light, gravity, electricity. You can see them. You don't need any equations. And even down one level, you have the G1 part, we call them G1 particles, but what we would call electrons, which are the same as photons, they're going around, but they're down there. There are smaller particles going in random directions that cause a gravitic field, a very small one, and it keeps those electrons going around the atoms. And we can reconstruct atoms that way, and we can describe. One of the big things is here's the big thing. If you take your phone, right, you set it on your charger, right? Here's what physics today says. You have electricity going around in a wire. It induces a magical word. It makes a magnetic field. What is that? They don't know. That magnetic field induces electrons in your phone, and it charges. But they have no idea. There's nothing being transferred. But all of us who set our phones on a charger are saying, "Oh yeah, there's electricity here, and it's going into my phone." But that's physics. If you go to a class in physics, they're not going to tell you that. That's not the way it works. And so the problem is they have empirical equations, mathematical equations, describe magnetic fields, describe how things go, but they do not tell you what a magnetic field is, what gravity is, what light is. And so that's what our four motions do. They all travel at the speed of light. Magnetic fields travel at the speed of light. We use them to particle accelerate. Light travels at the speed of light. We know gravity travels at the speed of light, and so does electricity. How could those be different? And so what we discovered through other people's work, Glenn Borkard's, the new over 30 years, is that these things actually have, that they're just motion. They're just different motions of the same particle. And
As I'm
they actually
listening to
happen at the
you,
bottom.
I realized I have no idea how one of those induction chargers actually works.
Yeah, exactly. And if you ask a physics person, they will tell you it's induction. Induction is a magical word to them.
But like, is it just supposed to be like removing the actual ions inside the battery back to the place where they're supposed to go?
They don't have a look. Believe it or not, there's no explanation for it. My dad's an electrical engineer for his entire life.
We're asking how batteries work now, but you can charge a battery just by driving a current into it.
Sure.
What we are saying is that what we call an electron is the same as a magnetron, is the same as a photon, is the same as a graviton. So it's going through the wires. While it goes through the wires, the nuclei of the wire also makes some of those go outside to create a magnetic field. A magnetic field are just electrons going like this. Those electrons are reaching up into your phone, and they get captured by the wires. And
how do these particles know where to go?
I was going to just ask that. Such a great question. What makes the wave?
I'm sorry?
What makes the wave? Like, is this a pilot wave theory?
Are you talking about like a light wave? What makes them come in waves?
Well, you're just basically they're all the same thing, and they come at you.
No, they're just particles, and there's actually below it, there's another set of particles which also work down there. So light, for instance, you have what we would call electrons. We're calling it the same particle. We call it G1. It's going around nucleus, and there's actually a lot more going on there. But there's going around. There's a quantum of these things.
But why are they doing that? Like, why are they?
Yeah, because there's there's a G2 particle, a gravitational field, which we call Coulomb's law, which is a smaller particle.
Okay.
What we call, and it's going faster than the speed of light, because the only way it can make those things, the electrons go around a nucleus, they have to go faster than that. So
did you see what I'm saying? Like, what holds them to the nucleus?
It's the gravitation. It's a second gravitational field of a smaller particle that goes even faster than light.
But do you understand my question? Like, how does a particle hold anything to anything?
Oh, I think it's
because it's called the shadow. No, it's called the shadowing effect.
Which is like a push theory.
Yes,
I see.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so when you have what gives it away is that why is it Coulomb's law and the gravitational equations are identical in this form? It's because they're both gravitic fields, which are random particles in traveling in random directions that will cause orbiting to happen.
You know, it's really interesting because as I was listening, I was thinking about this where I'm like, I've been thinking a lot about metaphysics, right? And the metaphysics, the way that I use that word is to say that everybody has a set of rules that they use to talk about the world. We all have slightly different ones. People that tend to be of a school of thought tend to have similar ones. Like all religions have one metaphysics versus like the metaphysics of Christianity versus Buddhism, of like physics versus biology. An economist sees everything through the lens of economics. Like everybody's got metaphysics. And I think that you can take the same mathematical relationships and start with a different metaphysics. Either it's push or it's pull. And you can describe all of them in exactly the same way, except inverses of each other without violating any principles. And
yeah, the only thing I would argue is that you don't have we cannot find a physical mechanism for a pull. We can for a push. We have collision, but we can't find one for a pull.
Pull plays a huge part in the body all the time. Like even with water, like Michael was talking about earlier, like water is entwined, like their surfaces enmesh and they pull on each other. You get tensions that occur.
I am having flashbacks to the conversation that you and David had many, many moons ago on the podcast, which you guys actually had this exact same conversation. And David was like, even pull is push because you have this thing that's
I actually wrote that into our book that's just coming out soon.
You know, here's one that I like to, for those in the audience, get your coffee cup and pull it toward you. What are you doing?
That's right. I remember now.
You're pushing the handle.
Well, I made it into our book. I'm proud to say I was working on it this morning.
Well, that was my dad. My dad actually did that.
All right, I'll give him a shout out then.
Well, look, David, I think that we should talk about AI, but the chat is having a conniption over the fact that I told them that I was the last person. So I think we're going to call one more name.
Yeah, you guys got it in you for one more? Let's see some enthusiasm in the in the audience? Anybody? Anybody?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we
Okay,
got
come
one.
on.
I say, get one more.
Yes.
All right, thank
I
you.
mean, it's almost midnight
Let's do
here,
one
so
more,
if
guys.
All
I
right,
can stay up this
who
late,
do we
they can.
have?
All right, thank you, David.
Thank you
It's
so
awesome.
much,
Okay,
David.
Appreciate your work.
Let's
It was
talk
really
again,
good
okay?
to see you.
Let's talk again, man.
Yes.
All right.
Peace out.
All right. All right. Who do we got? Who do we got? Who do we got? Who do we got? Hold on. Sorry.
What about the first guy?
First guy. I don't know if he's still here.
Tosa?
I don't know if he's still here. Hold on, I'm just sorting through these at this point. Alright, he left. Alright, let's do... Who's Casey? Casey was in here, right? Is Casey still here? Casey Brophy. Alright, let's do Casey. By the way, I just want you guys to know that Shilo spent all week preparing for this, and he figured out the synths, and he wanted to make sure that it was an absolutely sublime experience this time around.
Don't butter me up.
And I think that he achieved it. I think it's beautifully done. All right, Casey, my friend, you're in.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
All right, so you know the drill. You have 60 seconds. We have never seen you before, and your 60 seconds begins in 3, 2, 1.
Hit it.
All right, so consciousness evolves by experiencing electromagnetism. It is the interaction of energy fields that generates all experience. The complexity of the form determines the richness of the experience. Like a pyramid or tree, consciousness builds upward, with a strong foundation or roots that allow it to grow in complexity and intelligence. I believe that stars are massive clusters of consciousness emitting creative and loving energy that powers and illuminates the mind. When they supernova into new forms, consciousness evolves with them. It is the conditions of the universe that evolve the experience of it. As humans, we have a direct connection to electromagnetism. It's our compass for navigating reality. With each breath, we share in this collective experience, building towards richer and more complex consciousness. Even the simplest single-cell organism is conscious, contributing to the grand structure of existence. The end.
Yeah, that's a good way to wind it down.
Yeah, it's kind of got a little bit of everything in it.
On things.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right, welcome, Casey.
Thank you.
All right, so what problem are we addressing here?
I don't know. Can you guys hear the drag racing on the street and the chickens? It's a real. It's
almost AR-15 season actually out here in
I can hear
rural
those.
Oregon.
Yes.
All right, so what's the problem that you're addressing? What's the gap in knowledge that you're trying to address?
So I guess we're all trying to figure out what consciousness is, right? The hard problem of consciousness. And I believe that consciousness is fundamental. Electromagnetic fields are the carriers of experience, and consciousness evolves with the form.
Can you put that in your own words?
Well, is it teleological? Why are there so many forms? Is there like an intentionality in the sea of conscious entities?
That I don't know.
Me neither.
Interesting. I don't know. I think that trying to explain consciousness is a really difficult task. And I think that it's difficult because it's got so many moving pieces to it. And so I think that it's really hard to encompass something that is kind of like, to me, it seems like the grounds of existence. It's the same thing as trying to explain the eternity versus singularity. And kind of just is. And so it's hard to, I think that I see theories of consciousness more as attempts to encapsulate the awe of the experience. Does that make any sense?
What do you think, Kate?
I think so.
I just said, I'm like, what is the... Are you trying to explain how consciousness shapes things?
So basically, I'm trying to say that consciousness is the experience of the electromagnetic field, and it starts very, very simple with no intelligence, no memory, and from that experience, it changes forms and grounds itself into new forms of being, basically.
Oh, so this is like basically the bridge of panpsychism.
Have you read Olaf Stapledon?
I haven't read much of anything.
Dude, you need
I'm just
to
a
go
guy.
get this book. Go get this book called Star Maker and read the first chapter. And
Okay.
if you yeah, you can pirate it somewhere or something.
I
Just read it. If you're
you know
hooked,
what?
you'll buy it for sure.
I just bought that on my Kindle, which is weird.
You're kidding me.
And yeah, I didn't register what you said. Yeah.
All right. I think you're gonna love it. I mean, I don't know. This is one of the fringiest ideas that I'm a huge fan of. Is the possibility that stars possess the intricate electromagnetic structure necessary for computation. I don't know if they're conscious or not, but it seems like they have the physical hardware necessary for a thinking entity.
This is a really interesting thought experiment. What if you could take a human being and blow it up to be the size of the sun? What would it look like? Would it look like the sun? Is there some kind of just convergent evolution where if you make something that big, that's just like what it looks like?
Why would it have to be a human being?
Octopus, dolphin, ants, like, right? Tree, like if you scale any of the whale, exactly. Like,
I mean, one of the things that's really compelling to me, I'm sure I've said this before, is like they have these little. If you look at that Noah,
the estuary, I think it's the estuary.
God, I can never remember the name of this thing.
Literally,
I actually have an app on my phone.
Every time we do it, we spend like 20 minutes Googling.
Anyways, there's a top-down projection of the solar system, and you can see the plasma streams of the sun coming out and everything. It's on one of the NOAA websites. And they give out, like every once in a while when there's these flares, the sun gives out these little chirps, and they literally look like little sound waves traveling off into interstellar space. And it's like hard for me to not see the galaxy as like this chirping system that's exchanging, some sort of frequency-based information. Like it sounds a lot like it looks a lot like communication to me.
It's really just like a big network, and everything is connected to each other, communicating with each other.
It seems possible, at least. That's all I'm saying. I don't freaking know. I've never talked to a star, but I don't know. It's a far out idea that I like a lot. Kate, what do you think? Conscious stars.
I guess I'm like thinking about the practical implications mostly. So if consciousness is electromagnetism, then what about something like EMFs? What about my microwave? What about all these?
This is how you end up living in the woods, and
yeah,
I understand. I think that this is maybe the scariest implication of it. I agree. But do you think that it is affected by the stuff that's around us, or do you think that there's some kind of like stable resonance that gets set up when a body is big enough that things like microwaves don't really bother it? Casey?
I'm not sure.
It's okay. It's okay.
You're scared of power lines?
Yeah. We should all be scared of power lines. I remember reading about this where I was looking up suicide rates of electricians. I don't know why I was looking this up.
Yeah, it's bad.
They have one of the highest suicide rates of the profession, and people are like,
is it intentional though? Like maybe there's just a lot of accident.
Like people who live under power
poor
lines.
electricians.
No, they're like, it's because they're lonely. They spend a lot of time by themselves.
Oh,
I don't think it's
But people
true.
who live under power lines too have poor health outcomes. I don't remember the exact figure, but
I heard
the
about
argument
that.
is, of course, given like, well, you're poor, and that's why you live under a power line in the first place. So it's hard to deconvolve those kinds of things.
But I think that this
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
You good?
Do you guys believe that you were once a star?
It's in a Joni Mitchell song, so yes. I mean, wait. I guess like
me, like I was like we come
parts
back
of
to
our
this,
atoms were no.
do we come back to like me being the star, and I've just like slowly gotten smaller and smaller?
At some point, it's possible that your atoms and my atoms were both in the same star. Do you believe that that is true?
Sure.
Seems very possible to me.
Sounds very romantic.
Perhaps likely.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, we were that star. We don't remember being that star, but we evolved from that star. to become what we are today.
Do you think that when we were the star, we were like this still the atoms sitting next to each other and be like, yo, bro, what do you think consciousness and electromagnetism are doing to each other?
I think that maybe when we're the star, all we're thinking is maybe if there is thought at all, maybe it's just the experience of I am. And from that I am, maybe that's what causes a supernova and you desire to be with somebody else, right? And from that desire of like, oh my God, I'm alive, and you desire something else and you explode and become and evolve from that. I don't know.
Maybe you just cool off and evolve. I love it.
I love it.
Casey, where are you at, by the way? I've been forgetting to ask people this. Where are you at physically?
I am in New Jersey.
New Jersey. Right on.
Yeah.
All right. It must be. How late is it in New Jersey?
It's 11:30.
All right.
It's good. 6 a.m.
I haven't been in Jersey in a while. We're going to be out there, though, soon.
We are. Look, the next Paradigm Drift is going to be on the road. Shilo and I, the conference is less than 3 months away, which is really, really exciting.
I think we're going to do one on the road at my buddy's house in Ohio, and we're going to do one in Portugal. But wait, I'm done with Casey.
I'm sorry.
Casey, what do you do for a living?
So right now I'm unemployed. I teach myself investing, and I've been doing investing, and I just love philosophy, and I spend most of my time just thinking about why we exist and how to make the world a better place.
Nice.
Well,
it's probably more money in investing than in philosophizing.
Yeah, I don't think there's much. I'm not like I don't need money, you know.
Is your room very green?
No, I just have it blurred.
It looks like there's lots of plants behind you.
It looks like.
What were you going to say, Kate? You were going to say
Did I say something?
Oh, sorry. I thought you did.
Maybe I didn't. Maybe I did.
It's the snow leopard taking over.
I think I have like insufficient oxygen in here.
That's probably the cue. Casey, man, I love it. I think this is a fantastic way to wrap down this episode. I mean, Conscious
I've loved
Stars.
every single one of them.
Come back.
Thank
Check
you.
out Stapleton. Come back. We'll talk about this some more next time. And
I was so nervous.
Don't be nervous, man. We're all friends here. We're all just trying to learn how to communicate better. But
thank you so much.
I think it's a cool idea. I think you should work on it some more. Otherwise, guys, give him a hand. Come on, first of all, guys, come on. Let's give him applause.
All right,
Thank
you, Casey. Come back next time.
There it is.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, I can't hear myself clapping.
Well, folks, we have done it again. That is another full episode of Paradigm Drift. Number 2. We're going to keep going until the cows come home. So we'll be back next month with another version. Everybody should sign up if you didn't get a chance to present tonight's. If you screwed up the technical stuff, we got nothing against you. We want to see you come back.
Indeed.
But, wow, there's a real theme to this episode today.
I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I loved every single theory. Kate, Owlsley, thank you so much for coming to hang out with us.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
It was a pleasure. Every single one of you. Every time that we hang out with our audience, I'm reminded of the fact that we have somehow managed to just, in this like totally top-down way, create a group of people that is interested in all the things that we're interested in. And it is one of my favorite ways to spend my time. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to Shilo for the jams, man.
Heck yeah. Kate, any final thoughts before we let these people go?
I feel like I'm the only person who hasn't read The Electric Universe. And I feel like it was like in some way referenced like 10 times tonight. And also I feel like the ghost of Jordan Peterson's Archetypes is like just somehow floating around here. So
well, the Electric Universe thing is weird because it was this huge fringe movement at the dawn of the video internet age. And then all of its leaders kind of aged out. And so there's I think there's a little bit of writing, but I don't think there's any like central text for it. It's just kind of this collection of lectures. And I know they had some conferences for a while. And it is a real interesting.
Pretty popular in like among the paleo community back in the day, like 10 years ago.
You'd come across it before?
I just heard people talking about it, like people who are into grounding and mostly people who are into grounding. But I think people who sell those types of like grounding mats and stuff go to these health conferences where Electric Universe is always discussed. So
I think that it's a really interesting like shaped how theories exist and persist in the world. Like they were, I think, one of the first big fringe theories of the last 50 years or so.
I think they did an incredible service of just showing how people can come together and approach open, obvious problems in mainstream science from a totally different lens. And like, I'm not sure they like 100% nailed it on anything in particular, but maybe. And like, more importantly, I think they really just paved the road for how to organize outside of the academy, which is pretty dope.
I think we definitely belong to their lineage.
I'm sure we do.
Okay, so for next time, Electric Universe reading, and everybody has to read 12 Rules for Life, I guess. Or maybe Maps of Meaning.
And do your bed. Little boy.
The lectures are better than the text.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that is it. We've done it again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
It's been incredible.
Thanks. Have a good night.
And people in the chat are asking, will we post this whole thing? Yeah, we're going to basically just cut it down a tiny bit so that the like us messing around with technicals will get cut out, but everybody's going to be on YouTube. If you help us by sharing it, it will be much appreciated. We'd love to have even more people out here. But for now, okay, thank you so much. All the participants, all the theorists, have a wonderful night.
Good night, everybody.
I'll see you next time.
Thanks. Good night.